Thank you, Jared. Well, good morning. It's good to see all of you here today. I just want to take just a minute and kind of add to a little bit of what Suzanne was talking about earlier with Windshake Camps. We're very excited that this is coming. This is something that we do that is really for the whole community, and there's so many people in our community who will be involved, families and children alike, and it makes such a great impact. By the time we get to Windshake, which is June 24th through 29th, we will have, I'm sure, over 400 kids who will be a part of this. And so this is going to be a massive crowd of children at camp, okay? We're also doing this at a new location at Lee Scott Academy this year. And so we really do need people to get involved in helping with this, because not just crowd control, but influence on kids' lives. And let me tell you, if you have experienced this, you already know what I'm talking about. But what happens during this week is really amazing. Kids learning things they've never learned before. I mean, having a ton of fun. The comments that we hear back from them and their parents is amazing. But also what happens in their heart is what is especially impressive to me. They are going to be worshiping every week. They're going to be learning about the Bible. Many kids are going to accept Christ, and their life is going to be changed for eternity as a result of this week. Kids are going to give themselves more to the Lord. They're going to live differently. I mean, so many great things happen here. Life change will definitely happen, but it certainly takes a big team to put this all together. So here's the thing. I know it happens during the day, and maybe most of you work during the day, but if you have control over your schedule or whatever, maybe you're a teacher and you're not working this summer or whatever, we would love to have you help us out. Even if it's just for a limited amount of time, whatever you can give would really be great and would really be helpful for this. So again, like Suzanne said, you can just take that card, fill it out, or if you have questions, see somebody outside in the lobby. They'll be glad to help or answer any questions that you may have. But we're very excited about this. It's going to be a great week. God is going to reveal himself to these kids in a special way, and he is also going to reveal himself to all of the volunteers and the adults in a special way, I believe. So you'll want to be a part of that. All right. So speaking of God revealing himself, he has certainly done that in so many ways through his word, through the Bible. But I would say in particular, when we talk about this whole idea of God revealing something to us, there is one book especially of all those 66 books that we go to when we talk about this idea. It is probably the most controversial book. It is probably actually one of the most unread books of the Bible. It is one of the most misunderstood books of the Bible. It is also yet the most hopeful book, and it is also a very important book in terms of understanding what God's big plan is and what he's trying to do now and what he will do in the future. And of course, that book is the last book of the Bible. It is Revelation. And the beautiful thing about Revelation is that last book also gives us the end of the story. And so we can actually go and read the end of the story. Like, that's something that we should do. It's like if you've ever read a really good book and every chapter just kept you hanging, and finally you got to a point in the book and you were just like, I can't. Have you ever just skipped to the end? I mean, if you're like me, you have done that before. Like, you just can't wait. You have anticipated this. You know, you're reading your Cliff Notes and you just want to get to the end of that. You know, no, I'm just kidding. But you go to read the end, and so some people do that, and they come, and they're like, oh, man, and then maybe they're disappointed, and it's hard to get through the rest of it to get to the end again. Or some people, they read the end, they go, oh, man, that just relieves the tension from now on through the rest of this book, and because I know what's going to happen. Well, in many ways, because we can go to Revelation, and because we know the end of this story, that kind of helps us begin to live every day, knowing that end of that story. That's why Revelation is such an important and special book. Now, I have to admit, I'm the one who's actually suggested we should work through the book of Revelation. In 18 years of this church, we've never preached on the book of Revelation. We've preached on parts of Revelation, but we've never just taken it on. And so then it was my idea, and so now that we're in it, I'm like, I'm kind of nervous. It's kind of a big deal. And I've heard it said this, that Revelation is the book that most people in the church want to hear taught because they don't understand it. It's also the book that most preachers least want to teach because they don't understand it either. So, it's like, this is where we're going to go for these next few weeks. Great, our preacher doesn't even understand it. This should really be entertaining. And maybe it will be, but, it's kind of one of those books where it's like they're not the most devotionally oriented, and there's some good, strong stuff in there, but, there you are sitting on your back porch, drinking your coffee. You're just working through, a few pages of Revelation, and you get to the beast with 7 horns, and you're just like, oh, I get it. That's about my boss. This totally makes sense today. It's like I I now am very clear, God. Thank you for helping me understand how today's going to go. Anyway, that's not actually it, but it's not that kind of thing. You know, it's like there's something else that's happening here. It's literally called apocalyptic literature for a reason, because it's in that genre of helping us understand the future, but then it also helps us understand now, and it helps us understand what the church is all about, and again, what God's purposes are. All right, so here's the thing about today. Today, we're going to be working through just a little bit more heady kind of stuff, a little bit more context of the book of Revelation, the background, all that kind of just stuff that we need to get in our mind and heart before we do the next several weeks. If you're new today and you're like dropping in with us, we love you so much, and I really pray that after today you will keep coming back, because the rest of the weeks are not going to be just like today, because I'm going to be using a lot of words that you're just going to glaze over on. But anyway, hang with us, come back. It's all going to be good. But no, I think all of this is going to be helpful. It's going to give us some clarity and really set us up as we move forward. So what I want to do is I'm just going to read the first 2 verses of chapter 1 just to kind of get us started, and then we'll sort of go from there. It just says this. It says, "The revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John, who testifies to everything he saw, that is, the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ." So just helping us get set up, just that word revelation is such a big part of those first 2 verses, just the revelation to John. And that's kind of what the heading is, the revelation to John, or revelation of John. But some people would say it's actually the revelation of Christ is what we're getting in the book of Revelation. And so we'll kind of see that as it unfolds here in a minute. But the English word revelation, by the way, comes from the Latin word revelatio, which means kind of 2 things. It means to reveal or to unveil. So to reveal something that has not previously been known, or to unveil something that has not previously been known. Kind of like a letter that has been, that seal on it. That you look in that letter, you don't know what's in that letter, what has been written in this letter, I want to know what's in that letter, and then you crack the seal, you open it up, you read it, now you know. It has been unveiled, it has been revealed to you. And so in many ways, that's what this kind of a letter is all about, is just what has been revealed to John through Christ and what we need to know about this. All right, so the author is obviously John, but which John? There are several Johns in the Bible. It's the Apostle John, who was one of the sons of Zebedee, who also wrote the Gospel of John. There's lots of similarities between his gospel and the letter that we read here. He is also apparently one who is over 7 churches in the province of Asia Minor, and so that we know he was a leader of all of those churches in ancient Asia in that time. The date of writing was AD 95 to 96. It was during the reign of Domitian in Rome, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. He's kind of like between Nero and Constantine. It was written on the Isle of Patmos, which is an island right off the coast of Greece. And so apparently John had been exiled to that island because of the sort of crackdown on Christianity that Domitian had going on. And because of that persecution, John then was exiled to the island of Patmos. The recipients of the Revelation are to those 7 churches in Asia Minor. They are these particular churches: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. And then also you could add one more, the church today, to us. It's also written to us today. All right, so let's talk about the interpretations. Or let's not talk about it. I don't know. We should talk about it. So because if you've never read Revelation, it's so controversial because there is a ton of what we'll call symbology in this book. I mean, there are symbols everywhere. There's a lot of numbers that if you don't know what it means, it doesn't make it. What does 144,000 mean? Why does it keep talking about 12,000? Why is 7 keep showing up? And so that's something that you sort of look at. Then there are beasts and winged creatures and angels and surrounding the throne, and there's the Lamb and all this kind of stuff. And there's just a whole lot going on, all right, in this book, and lots of symbolism. So it has been interpreted for like over 1,000 years. And we're not going to get this clear today. I'm not going to undo 1,000 years of trying to interpret this and actually give you what it means. But here are some views that have been taken on this. One is called the preterist view of Revelation, which basically means that all of what is put in Revelation has actually already been fulfilled. That all the prophecies and everything that it talks about were actually fulfilled by AD 318 when Domitian was done reigning and then Constantine took over. You remember Constantine was baptized, became a Christian. And so at that time, all of this ended. So they would say that it's locked back there in time. That's what Revelation was all about, were the current events related to only that time. The historical view of this says that basically the book is a panorama of history that goes back to the days of John all the way into the coming of Christ and the establishing of the new heaven and new earth one day. That it's really just all history. That's what Revelation is all about. The idealist school says that this book is basically all about the conflict of good versus evil. It is like this big idea of what the war is that's going on out there all the time. It's been going on. It's going to continue going on until the end and when Jesus returns, but that it's mostly about that good versus evil war that's going on. Or there's the futurist school that basically sees chapter 4 on in the book as only dealing with the prophecies of what are ahead, and that there are symbols and things that we should be interpreting to determine the times, to figure out when the end is going to come. And so that's what they would believe. Which one is right? Tell me, please. Somebody, please. We don't know exactly which one is right. Anybody can fall in any camp because you can read a little bit of that into all of this. I would say that yes, there are probably elements of all of these put together. I think that there's history involved in it. I think it's talking about the days in which John was living and what was happening during that time, during the persecution of Rome. I think it has to do with our day and time today, and I think it has to do with what's to come. And you'll see that as we talk about this. I grew up with a very more of that futuristic view, I guess. The church I was part of, Sunday school class, all this kind of stuff. Like I can remember high school learning all about this symbology and all this kind of stuff. And there was like a lot of speculation on the times and reading the times. And is the Antichrist coming out of Southern Europe? And is he here yet? Remember Mikhail Gorbachev? You remember the president of the Soviet Union during the, 80s or whatever? And he instituted peace and was trying to, breaking down the wall and all this kind of stuff. And everybody went, oh, it's the Antichrist. He's instituting peace across the world. And then surely this is him. And you know what else he had? He had that big birthmark on his forehead. And everybody went, mark of the beast. It's the mark of the beast. And so we're all like, and it's him. He's arrived. And what do we do? And everybody was panicked. It wasn't that bad. But anyway, it just seemed like it was that bad. But that's like how people were interpreting the times, was, by Revelation and Daniel and some of the other books in the Bible to say, is it here? Is it here? No, it's not here yet. And that, I don't know where Gorbachev is now. I think is he still alive? Is he retired? I'm not sure what he's doing. But anyway, we still don't think that he's the one. But nonetheless, also, then people would use some of what we read in here to predict the date of the end, when Jesus is going to return. And there have been lots of preachers over the years who have predicted dates of the end, right? Well, it was this date. No, it was 2000. Surely the new millennium, this is the end. We're never going to make it. Okay, we're still here. And then there's, 2012. We thought that one was, nope, that's not it. And dates are still being predicted today, I'm quite sure. And dates will continue to be predicted, but nobody, I don't think, is going to be able to figure that out. But so here's the deal. In terms of the whole predicting, like when the end is going to come, that is based on particularly chapter 20 of Revelation, which talks about this 1,000 years. Okay, I don't know if you've read the book of Revelation, you know what I'm talking about. That there's going to be 1,000 years of peace on the earth, where Satan is basically in jail, and there's peace on the land, and everything is good, and all this kind of stuff. But the deal is Christ going to return where? Before that, after that. So premillennialism, these are party words. You use these at parties. These are good ones that you can impress everybody with. Premillennialism is the belief that Jesus will physically return prior to the setting up of the 1,000 years. So he gets here, he takes everybody, all his followers back to heaven, and then there's the millennium, and that's how that works. Postmillennialism says that he comes back at the end of that time. That's when he returns at the end of that 1,000 years. And then amillennialism says there really isn't an actual 1,000 years, that when he talks about 1,000 years, that's just a symbolic amount of time, and that actually that we're in the end times now, that it began when Jesus left the earth and returned to heaven, and that we're in this period of time of, not exactly 1,000 years, and that Jesus will come at some point to set up his kingdom, new heaven and a new earth, okay? And so, again, which one of those is right? I don't know. We'll know when we get there. But I think that actually my view is, if you want to know, I think I'm in that sort of amillennium thing that I think that we're already in, and we have been since Jesus' return. You can disagree. It's okay. We'll talk about that later. But I do believe that we're in that time, and that we won't know when Jesus is going to return, that we do have signs that we can look for, and there are plenty of signs, I think, today related back to what Jesus was talking about. But how long is this time going to last? I don't know. Maybe 10 more minutes. We better get ready. Just kidding. Gosh, y'all are so serious. But anyway, so back in Acts chapter 1, I just remember this moment when the disciples came to Jesus and they asked him a question, Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel? And he said to them, it is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority. In other words, don't get so hung up on this date. Don't get so hung up on this time. There are other things you should be worrying about right now. Okay, 3 purposes to this book. Number 1, to complete the prophetic theme that was presented in the prophecies, particularly of the Old Testament, and particularly the book of Daniel, and there's a lot of correlation between the 2 books. Also, to comfort and encourage believers in the midst of suffering and persecution at the hands of the evil one by assuring them that Jesus will ultimately and finally triumph in the end. And you see, that's the good part about the end of the book, is that we know that Jesus wins, right? We know that ultimately he wins, and we want to be associated with him in all of that. The third thing is to challenge churches to godly living in view of the certain return of Christ and certain judgment of evil. So here's the thing. We're not going to try to predict the date, and we're not going to talk about that kind of a thing necessarily, because what we're going to learn through the book of Revelation is that we have a sovereign God who is in charge of everything and who is in charge of the chaos that is our world, and that we have hope in him no matter what comes. And we're going to focus our heart and our mind and our attention on him. And he's the one who holds the keys of hell and death and the end and the now and our hearts and all these kinds of things. And so we want to make sure that we are completely focused on him. But there's no secret code that we're going to crack in these next several weeks together that we're all going to go, oh my gosh, and now nobody else knows it but we know it. I mean, that's not the point. That's not how this is going to go. But here's the truth. The end is coming. The end is coming. The sky is falling. But that's not how we should view that. The end is coming, so what are we supposed to do with the idea that the end is coming? So, okay, what do we do in light of all of this information today? In particular, is there any application that we can make today in light of what we've heard? I think there is. Here's a few thoughts that we can take from this. Number 1 is that we should live every day with purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like, we should be prepared every single day. We do that by giving our heart and our life to Christ first, allowing him to change us from the inside, and then we wake up and we say, Jesus, today I live for you. Here's my struggle, here's my pain, here's my issue. I give that to you, and every day we're continually giving it over to him, and we're taking steps toward him. And we're taking care of our relationships with other people. We're managing those well. We're making sure those are good, that there's no unforgiveness, that we're helping people, that we're doing everything that Christ has called us to do. We should live every day with purpose. There's this story that Jesus tells in Luke 12, 40. Well, the 40 is the end of it. But anyway, the story is basically a master leaves, and he leaves his servants in charge of his house and all of his possessions and everything that's there, and he goes to a wedding banquet, and he doesn't tell them when he's coming back. And so the deal is, while he's gone, they're supposed to be taking care of everything, the horses and sheep and cattle in the house and all the affairs. Now, when he returns, if he comes back and he knocks on the door and they're sitting there playing Xbox, eating Doritos, that's a bad day. And everything's a mess and all the affairs are out of order. Like, that's not a good day. But if when he returns and he knocks on the door, everything is just as he left it and they have been taking care of things and managing well, then that's a good day, he says, and I am going to now serve you. And this is how this is going to go. And he's like, and he says in verse 40 specifically, he says, you also must be ready because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. That's the lesson out of that story, is for all of us. We should all be ready. We should be attending to the spiritual things that we need to be attending to and living on purpose every day, focused on him, knowing, hey, one day he's going to return, or one day I'm going to leave this earth for whatever reason. Either way, I'm good to go. I just think we need to be able to say, I'm good to go. No matter how old we are or what stage we're in, we need to just say, I'm good to go. I'm ready, The second thing is that we need to live every day with hope. Again, because we already know the end of the story. God did not hide that from us. He wants us to know that ultimately Jesus wins. And when we look at all the horrifying, horrible things that happen in this world, sometimes we go, what is winning here? But then we read Revelation, we go, nope, Jesus wins. I don't know how God's going to make all this happen, but I know that in the end, he wins. And because of that, there is hope. This letter was addressed to churches, and lots of people in those churches were suffering under persecution from Domitian in that day, and it was the threat of death to be a Christian, and it was hard. I mean, they were enduring a lot of things that were just difficult, and so he's writing to also tell them, hang in there. Hang in there. You are following the right path, and you're following the right person. It's like I was reading the story of Josh Wetzel. Do y'all know who I'm talking about? His story has come out, especially in light of Memorial Day. He's an Auburn man. But he was in Afghanistan in 2012, a sergeant in the Army. He was leading a group of troops across the field, and an IED went off. As a result of that, he lost his legs, he broke his arms, he broke a part of his back, and it was very difficult and painful. Went to Walter Reed Hospital, had to get prosthetics fitted for his legs, and very difficult, very painful process to go through. And kind of a long story. I'll just tighten this up. Again, he's an Auburn person. Ends up he and Paige, his wife, end up back here in Auburn, have a home built for them by Homes for Troops. And they are associated with Auburn University. They have kids now, and it's just amazing how this story is unfolded. But what the best part about that is, there are plenty of opportunities for him to get completely down and discouraged and maybe even question God and wonder what has happened to my life. But not him. He's the kind of guy with this enduring spirit that even when the IED went off and the medic came over to help him, who was a good friend of his, the medic was panicked and was trying to get through this, and Josh was calming him down. He's like, it's going to be okay. I'm good. Just relax. We're going to get through this. It's going to be fine. I mean, that's just who he is. And he has this enduring spirit and hope in Christ. And he was quoted as saying, listen, I'm a spiritual person. I think that God has blessed me with this. It gives me a platform to help people. He said, there have been a ton of people who said to me, just seeing you walk around every day, it makes me want to work harder or to do whatever I'm doing better. And he said, but I don't necessarily think I'm a hero. I did my job like everybody else does. I just had a bad day on the job. I'm like any other guy. I just have a pretty cool story to go along with it. I'm like, man, that is awesome. I think the only way you can have that is with Christ in your life and having hope, right? Jeremiah 29:11. This is a verse that many of us know very well. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a what? A hope and a future. I mean, Josh knows God's got this. I'm not going to be distracted, discouraged. I'm not going to give up. I know this is all part of it. I'm just going to keep moving forward. I'm going to keep looking forward and trusting Him because I have the hope of Christ in me. And then just this last thing, that we should live every day with focus. Because good grief, this is a world of not being able to focus. But we've focused on Jesus, focused on the mission. I think the Revelation is also going to teach us to be focused because, you know what, I mean, no matter how much time we get on this earth, it's all short. And every day matters and every hour matters. And so we need to learn to focus. Winston Churchill said, you will never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every barking dog. If you just, every time you look around, it's like, I got to manage that barking dog. Now I got to throw rocks at that one. It's like, stop doing that. It's like you gotta keep pressing forward, because we're all distracted by shiny stuff. It's just like, this is some shiny. I was like, okay, now focus. All right, I'm good. There goes a butterfly. It's like, there's a bird. Oh no. I mean, it's like as we go through life, it's just this constant sort of like looking around at our circumstances, being distracted, and I think the gospel tells us, we need to stay focused. And I think about what Job said, even in the midst of all the hardship that Job was going through. In chapter 23, he says, listen, my feet have closely followed God's steps. I have kept to His way without turning aside. I have not departed from the commands of His lips. I have treasured the words of His mouth more than my daily bread. In other words, I have been focused on God. And I have followed Him with my life. And I know that as much as I need food, as much as I need water, I need God and I need His Spirit and I need His Word in my life. Because ultimately, when I leave this world, it is my soul that will live on for eternity. And if I'm not feeding my soul, I'm in big trouble. And so what that means for us is staying focused every day. Every day I wake up, I have the hope of Christ. I take that hope. I leverage that for the day. I offer that to somebody else. I'm giving them hope of Christ through the way I live. I'm offering forgiveness. I'm doing those things that Christ calls me to do. And if we do that, then we don't need to worry about the end and when is that coming and how is it going to happen and all of these things. Because we have peace, not anxiety. We have joy, not discouragement, right? We have that hope of Christ, and that's really what we need, right? You tracking with me on that? Okay. Well, let's pray.